Thank you very much, Avi, for a comprehensive session. Most of the questions that we even raised has been covered. We'll go through some of them, maybe to re-emphasize the importance of the ERP system and collaboration amongst the agencies when it comes to global shared services. But let me remind colleagues that now is the Q&A session. I think we have around 24 minutes. We can go to 25 minutes if needed. And you can raise your hand and raise your question directly to Avi or post it to the Q&A box or to us, and we'll bring it up for you. And just to kind of like start, Avi, just to keep the going, we talked a lot about the benefits of the quantum. You have indicated that the quantum has been already utilized by 10 of the UN entities at the moment. Colleagues, you can go to the UNSDG GSS dashboard to see these agencies. You can also see it in the presentation that we'll share with you. But maybe, Avi, you could indicate from the experience of integrating ERP system for these agencies, what has been the main challenges that the agencies might have faced during the migration of the quantum, and how those issues are typically addressed. As you clarify this, maybe you can also, I mean, one major question for everyone is like my data privacy, right? How is my data security handled? How about my HR and financial sensitive information? How are they handled if it is not my own agency maintaining the ERP system? Maybe you could briefly touch on this one as well, Avi, as we go with the next question. Thank you.
Thanks, Amir. Great questions, actually. And the question about data privacy, because the data privacy is an increasing concern within the IT environment and across us in society right now, as you see systems and data out there. Well, one of the pretenses and one of the core capabilities within Oracle Cloud is the ability to segregate roles in the organization, in the application and across your entity. So you're able to actually configure from two perspectives: the functions I can see and the data I can see. So the functions I can see are about what I can do in the environment. If I'm a buyer or a purchasing agent, I should only be able to do those purchasing actions and not necessarily do some actions that are, say, in an HR context. But in a data perspective, I should only see the items for my agency or even for my unit. And so we were able to configure the environment very, very clearly so that agencies only see their data. We need, as a service provider, in some cases, to see everyone's data. If we're administering your payroll, we get to see your data because we have to administer pay. We have to calculate in those components. But each agency does not see each other's. They only see their own. They're not able to actually query. Although they work in the same application, there's an effective wall in between each agency to only see the data, and even one more level of granular that's particular to the individual, down to their job role and function. So if I'm working in a country office, for example, there's two parts. One is from a security perspective. Maybe I should only get to see a certain thing. But in the UN, we actually work with a principle of transparency, meaning that we're not trying, we want to share what we're doing, and we want to share in all the good resource management and decisions we're making. However, we should effectively, from an operational perspective, I only need to see the vendors I'm working with. And so we have methods employed to be able to only see the particular data that's important to you, but also have access to relevant data to make decisions if it is across the organization. So there's I would call it thick walls up across organizations. They do not see each other's data at all. That's not the way it works. But within an agency, there's a little bit more transparency because it's meant to be transparent for some things and not for others. You cannot, for me as a hiring manager, I cannot see other hiring events. I only see mine. So if I put out a post for a job, I'll only get to see candidates and things for mine as a hiring manager. I will not see others. but the recruiter who's managing various recruiting events may see others because they're helping manage those recruiting events. So it's about having the right access to the right data. So that's from a security perspective. The second question you asked, Amir, was about implementing in some of the lessons learned in risks. One of the key things, and I talked about the data conversion, that's a very key aspect. What we found was in older systems, the data was in various spots in various ways. We operated with 170 different vendor databases. Bringing that together alone was a mountain to climb. And as we brought that data together, at first, it was quite painful to operate because you have data with different banking information, different address information, everything. As we brought it and solidified it into one place, and the quick question would be, well, one, how would you bring that together? It's a lot of hard work to look at the data and make sure you have the right data. But the second is how do you prevent that going forward? And the answer is self-service. We let vendors register themselves, manage their own data. We don't have to touch and re-key data in. We want it keyed once. We want it keyed by the source of information. So the vendor can manage their own data. They can put it in. And once we have it from there, that valid data can be used across the environment in order to make payments, look at what contracts we're managing with these vendors, to all of the different capabilities. So it's very exciting that way. But I think those are the key aspects. The other big thing about shifting to cloud I'll talk about is as you shift to cloud, the new ways of working need to be considered. That in cloud, it operates a certain way. And we're very used to in the UN system across agencies working in a certain way because that's the way we've always worked. And these system implementations are not about technology, they're about people. It's about the change in how we do our work day to day. And at first, it can be painful. I used to always do XYZ every day. Now I do something different. But as you start to use the data and start to use it in the new way, there's a realization that there are different ways to do things. There is a better way. One of the key aspects of challenging the processes we have are about what is the goal we're trying to achieve within the guidelines we're given. Not to do it a certain way, but to more achieve the same result. Make sure that we're effectively controlling our resources and executing our mandates is a key aspect of it. And as we use the cloud technologies, that change management aspect of what it means to somebody and what they do differently is a big part of the implementation. And I can't stress enough how much we need to talk to our end users about their experiences and work with them to understand what are the things and pain points, as well as what are the points that are providing us the greatest benefit. So we can take those lessons learned and think about the value proposition and how we can put that across areas.
Thank you, Avinash, and very comprehensive. Maybe we can touch a little bit on the aspect of the various ERP systems that UN entities are utilizing. We have some of the agencies using SAP, some of the agencies using Oracle-based ERPs. Has there been any study conducted independently by UNDP or as part of the DTN network to show the pros and cons of using different systems, the cost benefit of it, and which ones, let's say, not necessarily we should say quantum, but I'm sure you'll give an objective overview here of like how would entities benefit and basically have better efficiency by using one of these ERP systems, and if there is one that has come on the top.
That's a very good question, Zamir, and of course I would probably be a little biased from my perspective, but I'll try to give a more objective answer to that question. Essentially, when you look at the ERP market, and I've been working with ERPs for close to 30 years now, the ERP marketplace, there's 3 tier 1 vendors in the marketplace. There's Oracle Cloud, SAP, and Workday. Those are the 3 top tier vendors today. When you look at each of those vendors, they each have a little bit different in their philosophy of delivery. And you, as an organization, need to look at how do you employ your ERP and which philosophy best closely aligns with your agency. There's no right or wrong here. They're all good applications. They all can administer people. They can all administer resources. They all do it their own. What you need, if an agency is already on SAP, they would be more closely aligned with the SAP way of working, I would suggest. And so that if they were to make a shift across ERPs, for them, the change would be a little bit different. We have an agency right now joining us that is on SAP and is joining the consortium and learning the Oracle way of working. And we can see that the language we use in managing our systems is a little different, but we'll get through the change. It should work out great. I would never say one is really better than another. That's why I talk about the philosophy of the system. We chose Oracle because of a few different aspects. And one of the key aspects is we were on Oracle-based technologies before, and we liked that Oracle's way of working, from a integration, from a flexibility to provide the autonomy of our partner agencies, and also from the extensibility, the ability to extend it, change it, and being able to adopt different kind of methods for each of our partners. So when UNFPA wanted to build their own programmatic management system, they could build it and we could integrate it in. And we did, and we found that an easy way of working. So you have to look at kind of those aspects. Has there been a study done? The ERP SIG within the UN did commission a study 2 years, 2023, I believe it was, across the UN environments to look at different entities, what systems they're using, their direction, and what's a good fit. They didn't. The interesting thing of the study was the study actually came back saying the UN, in order to get the most cost benefit, should consolidate environments. It's not efficient for each agency to do their own ERP. It's more efficient to consolidate across platforms. I'm not saying quantum's the only answer. I think the environment to succeed in the long term should have an SAP option, should have an Oracle option. That way agencies can best align with their philosophy. We might be closer to the ability right now, but as agencies, if another were to develop that type of capability, and I know that Secretariat is very strong in their SAP and how Umoja can service other agencies, and they are within our kind of ERP as a service are offering SAP in the same kind of manner. And I think that's what the study actually pointed out was that, and this was a more effective way for the entire UN to leverage benefits by doing it in one spot for multiple agencies. And I don't think there's one answer for everyone, but I do think that there needs to be a coming together, because as agencies start to invest in ERPs, undergoing the risks, going through the same decision processes, time to getting these to market, you can hear about various projects that are very costly and risk heavy that agencies go through. This can limit that by having common ways of working.
Thank you, Avi. Colleagues, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll unmute your, we'll allow your mic, and you can unmute yourself and ask questions as you wish to. Just before we go for the next question to Avi, I wanted to make a quick announcement. You may have that next week at the beginning of our session at 10 a.m. New York time, we will have one of the big co-chairs joining us for an exclusive session to speak with the field and share their perspective about the initiatives of the Business Innovation Group, particularly about the global shared services. So we urge all colleagues to register for this session and join us in this conversation with one of the big co-chairs, from UNOPS, the Deputy Executive Director. And then a couple of weeks later, we will also have Mr. Andrew Saberton, the other co-chair of the Business Innovation Group, joining us again for exclusive appearance to talk to the field. And we will announce that, and we'll share with you the date and registration as well. So that aside, Avi, coming back to you with a question about your recent clients. So you did mention that 10 UN agencies are currently using Quantum, assuming in the, and I know, but in the most recent, some agencies have joined the system. What kind of support has been provided for these agencies in terms of their onboarding, in terms of like the change management that you provide as a package as you offer a ERP system? And if there has been any, and related to another question, that for the existing agencies that are utilizing the ERP system from UNDP, what kind of client satisfaction surveys or assessments are done from time to time, and how do you support the agencies when they face problems, when they face challenges implementing this new system for them?
All right. Okay, so there's kind of two questions there. Let me start with about the new agencies. So the two most recent agencies, World Meteorological Organization out of Geneva and Montreal in Canada, have joined. So they just went live this year. So WMO went live in January and ICAO went live in May. So we're very excited to have them join the consortium. With any ERP implementation, the first go live and the operations is always a change right off the bat. So it is always a challenging period, from training to user kind of discontent and stress. You're putting enough change into an organization that it is a complex thing to undergo. In order to make that easier, there's different aspects to it. So the one was a 14-month project, one was about an 18-month project in their implementations. We go through an entire implementation, from designing what they want to use, to building it, to iteratively, as I talked about, seeing it in the environment, to testing it. But once we go live, we have a key phase of our projects called hypercare. And in that component, our project team stays around. They work with the client to make sure that the processes and the individuals working in the system have quick access to answers. You don't want someone to say to you, oh, just log a ticket. That's not fair. Yeah, I need to do this today. Help show me how to do this today. And hypercare is designed around providing that immediate support to those users to kind of enforce the training they've gone through, help them with the first time doing those transactions, to make it seamless for them to understand and be confident in what they're doing in the system. So not only through the implementation component, but through that hypercare, it's really important that they're supported through the go live. Part of the implementation cycle, though, we have a methodology, and we have a core set of deliverables, from our assessment of change to our key communication messages, to the training, to the communication models. We have an entire stream dedicated to change management and the people side of the project. We have that. We have all the kind of templates and deliverables we had in our project and that have been in these subsequent projects that we can reuse and kind of repurpose for future implementations. That way, you're not inventing it for the first time. You know that, oh, these are the questions that will be asked. Here's the type of thing. It's always still first time for the new agency, but at least we know kind of a little bit of how to respond and work with. The second part of your question was around our ongoing support and existing partners. We have a robust set of help desk in place. So when I talked about tier 1 help desk, each agency is responsible. We want users at first to turn to their neighbor. How do I do this? How did I do? And they look at the super user within the organization who understands that organization's policy and process. When the system doesn't behave the way they expect it to, they log it with UNDP. We're able to, our help desk is able to look at it, and it has a very robust repository, knowledge base about the type of questions that get asked. To give you an idea, we're fielding about 3,500 support tickets a month. Of those 3,500, that help desk is able to address 2,500. So 2/3 of the questions are, how do I do this? and we can help them, and we have the knowledge repository. So we're constantly working on those. The other 1,000 come down to the more technical team. And that those 1,000, we actually noticed 80% of those tickets are about data and training. And there's only a small percentage, 6 to 7%, that are where it didn't behave exactly like we expected it to. So we need to actually do some remediation efforts, which across the kind of volume of processes that we're doing is actually not that much, but it's still something that we're very focused on. In understanding our user satisfaction on any kind of ticketing process we do, there is that star rating system. Did were you happy with the support you got and all that? And I think in society now we get asked these type of questions so much in all the various things we deal with. But that's the mechanism we have to be able to measure how are we doing. Our customer satisfactory rating has been over 95% for the 3 years we've been in operations and live. Our SLA says we want to keep it over 95. We dip close, but normally we're in the 97, 98% range. So people are very quick to say when they don't like something. They're also pretty good at saying, yep, you guys did good. Thanks for helping us solve the problem. So that's our mechanism in order to kind of meter how we're doing. The other meter we use is about how old are some of the tickets and support things going? Because as we work with different agencies, and we can always get better at it. I would not say it's perfect by any stretch, but I would say that we're doing pretty good right now. When our satisfactory rating is high, our ticket throughput is very good. But on the same token, it can always get better. I don't like sometimes when, after a little while, sometimes there's an aging. As we get through Q4 right now, like any other part of the UN environment, there's a big push for our delivery at the end of the year. Those delivery pushes mean more activity, means more questions. We need to be ahead of those and know that we need to get ahead of those. We also tried some surveys out to users to talk about, but when you blindly ask questions, do you like a system? They don't have a choice. Our users, it is our back office. So at the end of the day, they get to use the system. They might like the other way of working, the way it worked in the past, but there may be good reason for the new way of working. So we did do a survey about the system itself. We didn't see as much. The responses were hard to respond to from the perspective of what can we tangibly do to make a change, because it wasn't the right forum to be able to capture what are the things we can do better. So we created more forums about what are some new ideas and ways. In that ticket volume I talked about, an interesting metric we have, when we started and went live, only 3 to 4% of my tickets were about new ways of doing things, an enhancement request. Today, that question goes from 10 to 12% of my ticket volume. Is people going, you know what? I like all this part. I want this different. Can I change this? Can I change this? And we have a very structured process. We look at those changes to be able to continually improve our environment.
You discussed a lot of the points that were raised, even in the Q&A part. Maybe we can look into the lessons learned part of this exercise so far. You indicated that 10 agencies have already signed up to ERP system, the quantum ERP system, and they're utilizing this. What has been the most recent main lessons learned, or kind of like challenges that may have come across these integrations? Maybe you can shed some light on that while the colleagues will come up with more questions.
Thanks, Amir, and great question. From a lessons learned perspective, one of the key lessons in our main implementation and even in our most recent implementations is never underestimate the amount of time and required for data conversion. The data in your old environments have different formats, structures, and when you have modern systems in place where you want to capture more data, a transformation and the capturing and cleaning of that data takes time and effort. So depending on how much history you want or how much you need to operate with, that conversion exercise cannot be underestimated and cannot be undervalued. We found going from 170 different vendor databases to one of a large scale effort. And first, when we operated, having that data in so many different formats was very challenging to make sure that we could pay our vendors effectively. We needed the banking information in a uniform, validated manner. The good news is once we're up and running, it runs really well because the data is cleaned, it's validated, it's in. Today, vendors will self-register. They will enter their own data. The system will have inbuilt validations for the data, and we have checks and balances so that we don't let the data in if it's not in a good format for us to use and act on. Then our processes become more efficient and our reporting downstream becomes much better. So data is one of the keys. The second key I would say from a lessons learned is never underestimate the amount of change. And again, not a technology part, and I talked about it a little bit, was about the people change of these implementations. People are very used to the way they work today. And when you come in and change a system in the back office of how people operate, the number one thing happens is, what about me? What do I do tomorrow? I used to do this every day. Should I keep doing that? And making sure that it's clear, it's understandable, and that the objective of the process is still being met. It's not important that we do the exact same thing always. It's that we meet those policy processing objectives of the process. Is the vendor being paid efficiently and effectively for the services delivered, and did we have the right controls in place? Those are the key aspects. Forms, not necessarily. And so those type of things about changing the process, those are the heavy lift of the implementation. And it's important when you start at the onset of an implementation to make a log of the different changes from a process perspective agencies will go through.
Thank you, Avi. And I think we'll keep it related to this because a lot of the audience that we have for these webinars are efficiency champions, change makers, change management advisors, and it's very key actually that you mentioned about the change and the people side of this, because there is perspectives that a lot of new initiatives may be introduced without doing the proper change management support and bringing the staff, the people, the stakeholders, all of the stakeholders, including the users, on board. So for the entities, particularly small or medium-sized entities that does not have significant change management capacity or ICT capacity, in case if they are considering transitioning into a new ERP system in a medium or short term, what kind of supports will be provided by UNDP, both from the technical ICT and ERP perspective, as well as from the change management perspective?
And change management, and as you've noted, it's a huge part of these implementations. We recognize that very clearly in our implementation. And what we did was we had a robust track built around change management. And those resources built out a formal approach. We leveraged with the ADKAR model, it's called, of change management. There's a few different models. They're all good. But it's important to leverage and highlight the components that are important. So what we bring to the table when we come to new agencies is we already have the templates ready to go. We have a change assessment. We have a plan with when will we do communications, what are some of the templates. We have it pre-prepared. So what we've learned about our implementation was that rather than just implement and be done and just have a bunch of binders on the shelf saying what you did, we tried to create it so that we can reuse and recycle these materials. They're never perfect, but if we can bring those to the next implementation and they already have a templated strategy, smaller organizations can right size it for their organization. Do I need to do stakeholder assessments? Do I need to create a change champion network? These type of things we already have built into our model. And since we have that in our methodology, we come with all these templates and we walk through. Now, change management is the responsibility of the agency itself. We cannot take accountability for the change because as an agency undergoes the change, they need to take that accountability for the change to their processes. But we support that by giving templates, methods, ideas, and we build it into our plan so that it's a key part of the fabric of the actual implementation approach.
Thank you, Avi, and it's great to hear that the ADCAR, or one of the key PUSI basically approaches, are utilized in here, which colleagues doesn't only focus on project management and implementation of a new system, but one of the key aspects of that is change management and making sure that people, all the people that are affected by an initiative are involved, consulted, and brought up in the process. Avi, maybe you can mention a little bit about the cost efficiencies when using a shared ERP system, because a lot of colleagues here would be interested that how would ERP integration benefit the efficiency initiative or the efficiency roadmap of the UN SDG, and how would this shared cost model that you were presenting would help reduce the cost for all of the participating agencies?
Excellent, Zamir. No, great question. And I think one of the things that to highlight from a cost perspective is, as we entered into the cloud, we entered it at an opportune time where the vendors that were asking their clients to go to cloud had some very good deals available. So we entered into at a very good price point. So we have a very deep discounted view of our licenses because it's all about your negotiation. Now, starting with 30,000, employees or users in our system allowed us to create a model with a very good price point per employee. And what that means is we can share that economies of scales through the consortium. And the way we've set up our cost model is that as consortium partners join, they only pay their portion based on employees paid. So they only pay their particular percentage, and allows us to, one, gain more insight in ways we have more partners that we can learn and leverage from, but it allows them to get the economies of scale and more negotiating power with vendors at the end of the day, because that's something that doesn't exist. And one of the key parts, and we talked about it a little bit on the morning call, was a study was done by Deloitte, I believe, with the ERP SIG around the proliferation of ERPs in the UN environment, about how each organization is looking at now, as you go through these different waves. The first wave was Y2K. There was another wave mid 2000s. There was another wave in 2012-ish when the first IPSA standards created, and each agency had to do their way of adopting and doing these changes. We're now hitting a wave where agencies now need to consider going to cloud out of the things. And then we're going to hit an AI wave as well, as if you look forward. As we go through these different waves, how do you adopt this technology? How do you think? The study looked at what agencies are doing, and it actually came to an answer that as a UN sector, pooling our resources and working in a common way is the most cost-effective answer to organizations. And I'm not saying quantum is the only answer, but as a technology-centric view, there should be centers of excellence around ERP within the environment, and that would enable the entire UN network to get better economies of scale in these investments, so that we're not all in parallel solving the same problem. We're actually looking at how have we solved it and getting a more thorough kind of approach across agencies as we go there.
Thank you, Avi. So colleagues, any other questions, please do raise your hand. But before we take another question, wanted to highlight that our next week's webinar is on UN Fleet for leasing vehicles, but we have a special appearance for at the beginning of that webinar, the one that happens at this time at 10 a.m. We will have Ms. Sonja Leitenkon, the Deputy Executive Director of UNOPS, who is one of the big co-chairs, the Business Innovation Group's co-chairs, join us. And she will be speaking about the Business Innovation Group, its initiatives, and particularly the global shared services and where they discuss what are the key aspects of this. So we look forward to have you join us in the next session that is in the coming Tuesday, and we'll be sharing with you the registration for this. I have a couple of other questions that's on the Q&A, but let me hand over the session to Jason, who has raised his hand. Jason, please come in. Your mic is unmuted. Yeah, you're good.
I'm unmuted. You can hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Amir. How are you, buddy? Avi, my name is Jason Vasquez. I'm a program management officer under administration for the resident coordinator system. UNDP provides local service support to about 115, 116 of our RCOs. I think you're probably very well aware. My question is in particular to quantum ERP support to these RCOs, as we have no access to the system, being Secretariat staff members working in Umoja. So therefore, UNDP as our service provider would perform the actions as needed in the quantum system. We have several RCOs indicating to us that they're having some hard time getting supporting documentation from colleagues from Quantum, most specifically travel requests. That Quantum doesn't produce a travel request per se or a relative PDF copy as a supporting documentation, which we would then use to turn around and add into Umoja under our own travel request, because there is a necessity to put a traveler in a staff member in traveler status for Appendix D and security and medical clearance purposes. So regarding travel requests specifically, and then also we have instances of financial accounting information, financial reporting to RCOs in the sense of, they request services from UNDP. We send financial authorizations to transfer funding from our funding source to UNDP, and country offices are having a hard time getting quite simple financial reporting from the local entity there, versus what we're told is to refer to the service clearing account reporting that is used between the Secretariat and UNDP. A bit of a mouthful. Happy to clarify further if needed. Thank you.
I think there's a couple key points there. I'll take the travel one away, because I believe there is travel reporting for that, but I'll talk to my travel colleague to make sure that we can look into if there's not a key report. And I'm not conversant directly in that detail of the process for travel, but I believe there is a travel request document, and then we should be able to get that to you to perform that. On the SCA side, on using that framework and that reporting, we can always do better. It's a very complex model in which we do the financial authorizations and the payments and getting back. And I know that one of the things, even in the Treasury group that was meeting in parallel, there was quite a bit of feedback on how we're doing that reconciliation process and getting that feedback back. I know it's a very complicated interface working with the Secretariat in that regard. But if you can give me a couple of the key examples from that one, if you can send them, my email's on the screen right now. I can get the team to look into those specific areas, and maybe we need a little bit more adoption coaching, or maybe we need extra reporting to help to feed that and make it better.
Yeah, we can talk bilaterally, and I can possibly even include some of the UNON colleagues that you guys liaise with, because that'll be doing it. But yeah, there's probably a much larger conversation to be had off this forum. Thanks, Amir. Sure. Thanks, Avi.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, any other questions, colleagues? Please feel free to raise your hand or post your questions directly here. Avi, let's look into the kind of the future and longer term perspective. What are the long-term plans for integrating ERPs within the UN system to one or two ERP? Is there any talks about this in the top level and in the digital network level and all? And Also, is there like any kind of like pathway for integration of like some of the Oracle-based ERPs that may be utilized currently by the agencies? I mean, some agencies are using SAP, some agencies are using Workday, but if there are other entities that are using Oracle, is there like kind of like a first step or initiatives to bring these entities together, and in the longer term have the UN use one ERP system, which is very ideal but hard, or one or two or three ERP, so that everybody could have the same system?
So, no, it's a great question, Zamir. And I think the ERP as a service, part of the HLCM initiative now under BIG, ERP as a service, which is what we're talking about today, was, it has two key leaders in it. UNDP is kind of, we were the initial primary leader, and the Secretariat is the second. So they've outwardly said Emoja is an option as another ERP as a service for other agencies and entities. Is there a push to force agencies into these sides? There is not. I think with agencies having their own autonomy on their technology, it's a choice that agencies make. But I think with this endorsement and looking at the way we've kind of architected and created, we're giving agencies a very positive option, high value option to them, where why would you do it on your own if you can actually leverage a service that gets you the same place quicker, better, faster, and more importantly, cheaper with high value. So from a technology perspective, there's 3 tier 1 vendors out there: SAP, Oracle, and Workday. I think when I look at them technology wise, of course, I'm always biased, but when I look at them, each tier 1 vendor has its own way to solve the same problem. They can all pay a check, they can all manage an employee, they can all procure and contract services. They just do it a little bit differently. Each has its own philosophy and way of working. And sometimes that's more aligned, or agencies are more aligned to certain philosophies. So when you look at Oracle-based agencies, when they look at quantum, whether you're coming from Oracle EBS or PeopleSoft or even JD Edwards, you would understand quantum very easily because it's a similar working model as the other oracles. So from a adoption perspective, it would not be as arduous of a journey per se. From an SAP perspective, though, there would be introduced new language and new ways of working that Oracle has, that SAP does it its own way. There's no right or wrong here. It's just that the way the technology provides that answer or solution. And I think like, if my view of kind of the future would be kind of centers of excellence for technology developing, even in the DTN network across the technology leaders across the UN system. They talked about that there's such a proliferation of different ERPs across that it would be good to see consolidations of this in centers of excellence where common things are being done, so that we can gain one alignment and we can gain and learn from each other rather than have each of us solve the problem our own way. What does that mean? It means that if there's staff members working in quantum in one place, them joining another quantum agency, from a back office and citizenship to the organization, familiarity would already be there. They would know how the HR process worked. They would know how to do different things because they were already in the system. They would have a different view of data. They would have a different view of functions and features based on their new role, but they would already have a common way of understanding the system. Now, could you figure that out? Of course you could, but it's this commonality that will create more efficiencies as we create these environments within. So I think there, we'll see the idea and the scope for ERP as a service, and that's been talked about amongst technology leaders, is about going into more centers of excellence. But I think because each agency owns the autonomy to make those decisions, they each have to come about it in their own manner.